Thanks very much for what has been, I think, a fantastically moderated conference. You always do it well, but this one, I think, has had just a lot more. I think it's not only shown by the numbers that have turned up, but by the quality of the content. This afternoon's session, I think, really very much sums up the importance of communication, but it's the last couple of days that have really highlighted the content of the story that we've got to tell. I guess trying to sum up when so much has gone ahead is not easy, and I'll try and be as succinct as I can, but there's no doubt that the presentations over the last 2 days have highlighted the huge opportunities that present themselves to this industry. There is a mood of optimism, and it's an optimism that I think has got even more momentum coming out of this couple of days. This conference has given context, it's given perspective, but it's also identified the challenges, because we've heard that mentioned many times as we've listened to presenters over the last 2 days. The perspective, I think, is important to reinforce. You are part of a huge industry in this country, but not many really understand the significance of that industry. It's the largest trade-exposed manufacturing sector in the country. And we've heard the question about the decline of jobs in manufacturing. This is the success story in that particular space. It's also now our 5th largest exporter. It's behind the resources, it's behind education, it's behind tourism, but it's up there in a significant way. And significantly, as Catherine Marriott pointed out, it's not just serving a domestic audience in the terms of the jobs and the opportunity that's there. It is fundamental to meeting the challenge of global food security. And I think it's a really important point to hammer home, because this touches many people. You only have to look at the ads about how you get people out of poverty and assisting them achieve that. Here is the opportunity to meet one of the fundamental challenges facing all of those countries. It's also an industry that has lifted standards here and overseas. We know from the presentations that the future demand is huge, but I think, as Ian Mars interestingly pointed out on the very first day of this, the challenge to us isn't just the competition that's out there, but it's how we address supply. And that's where the issues that Peter have alluded to, that in the producer forum at the beginning, the research and development, that goes to the question of how we lift productivity, how we get more out of what we do, how we ensure that the infrastructure in roads and ports, for example, are ensuring the continued efficiency of the distribution chain, and how important it is that we're continuing to invest in research and development and innovation. And Sharon and her team and the cooperation that's there between LiveCorp and MLA are identifying where your dollars go and where we draw the leverage for those dollars, which the match funds from government. I think the challenge is really how we leverage those funds even better, how we look to what the governments of Indonesia are prepared to put out in terms of getting their farmers out of poverty. These are where we can get strategic alliances. They're where we can work with the multilateral bodies like the World Bank, like the Asia Development Bank, how we can build the essential infrastructure over there in terms of the aid monies that are available. The other, I think, strong message that came out of the presentations was how well regarded your industry is in the rest of the world. It's that strategic strength and that need to brand it and promote it through its different forms. We are recognised as world leaders in the integrity of the supply chain, in the quality of the product, in the efficiency by which we undertake the sector, the skills that we put in and the training that goes into it, our reliability, trusted partner, and this was brought in to stark attention when the industry was closed in 2011. This point was referred to in terms of the presentation on Indonesia. And also our strength and leadership in animal welfare. And it was interesting that Mauro today in his presentation before lunch talked about how this aspect was really important to his investors in the float of Wellards. But it's important because this is what has the capacity to shut the trade down. It doesn't matter how good you are, how efficient, how much quality, if we're not addressing properly the animal welfare issue, it can market public opinion, it can have sections of it significantly closed off. And I was very pleased to be part of the listening to Temple Grandin. She doesn't pull any punches, but essentially she was saying that what she'd seen, not only was she really impressed with, her fundamental message is don't fall behind. And really what that means is not just not falling behind, but striving for continued improvement, striving to be better at it and to reinforce that world quality brand. And that's what the presentation on LGAP was about today. And I think significant progress has been made, and I congratulate the Schusters, but also the advisory group that is reporting to them on the way in which they have pulled this material together. And I think that certainly at the general meetings that were had at the beginning of this week, I think there is a far better understanding every time we get updates in terms of that program. What I was also struck with was the presentation from Dr. Bernard Vallat about the importance of the OIE in this scheme of things. I think it was a really informative session because not many people know about the OIE, and yet it has 180 constituent members, governments around the world. But their work in terms of making standards that are internationally recognised and going on the record saying SCAS is better than the OIE standards. In other words, it's another world leader. We need to be more creative and more involved in the work of the OIE in helping promote this direction forward. And I thought the other interesting challenge that he threw out was the fact that in terms of your sector, there is no international business organisation. We know the importance of business-to-business dialogue in this game, and I'll come to that in a minute. But if we're serious about that, we should really be taking up the challenge of trying to organise an international business organisation that can be in dialogue on a regular basis through the OIE. Just in terms of how we promote, I think it's significant this year too that we've seen the release of the meat industry strategic plan, and Ross Kane, as chairman of ALEC, has been at this conference all week. That was a lot of work done by ALEC and the team, and that's given the framework against which the other sectors of the industry are being encouraged to develop their plans. And Live Corp, in fact, launched theirs just this week. So for those looking for the strategic framework against which we go forward over the next 4 years, it's there for that. The next, I think, significant message that came out, and it came out through that great forum that John Ackerman chaired yesterday, and welcome back, John. I think all of us are very pleased to see you back involved, but he highlights, he knows we're all the dots that need to be connected exist in terms of these relationships. But what I was also impressed about from that session was the honesty of Dickie Adewoso. Essentially, his message was, forget the white noise in terms of where the Indonesian government says it's at from time to time. Develop the business relationships, and through those strengthened business relationships, seek to engage the governments. Now, this is a really important message. It was reinforced by Dick Slaney and by Wilson, and they epitomise the maturity of the industry operating in that market. But really, what we've got to do, never lose sight of the fact, and I've had to deal with this as a Trade Minister perspective and through so many other fields, it's business in the end that's going to drive the fundamental agenda. Yes, you have to deal with government and you have to influence government, but a united, coordinated position from industry is something that really has impact on governments. The more we can strengthen the B2B, the more we influence through the Bs, the G to G. And it's about joining that loop that is going to be fundamental, in my view, in terms of realising this vision that we've set for ourselves. The final point is coordination. And I really can't stress this enough. I don't think we lack resources collectively. I don't think we lack a framework to make things happen. Where we do fall down is we don't coordinate all that well. The big challenge, in a strategic sense, is more effective coordination of what we do best, what we know we do best, and how we can pool better, more effectively, the resources that are going to make it happen. So, I want to thank all of you who have participated this week. I've learnt a hell of a lot out of it. I'm sure all of you have as well. As much as you think you know the industry, there's always more to learn. But to the organisers of this conference, not just to LiveCorp and ALEC as bodies, but the organising teams that were involved, led by Sam and Alison and their teams, to all of the presenters. But you've done a fantastic job, in my view, pulling all this together. And industry should be very proud of where it sits, but not so proud that it drops the ball and tries to stand still. So the framework exists. Let's try and make it happen. There's plenty to do over the course of the next 12 months. There'll be a lot of dialogue that goes around it, but this has provided a terrific foundation to reinforce the potential of this industry. The challenge is, let's realise it more fully. Thank you.